Oh.
And we are live. What's going on? Facebook and YouTube live. It is your boy Billy Wroe of the First Row. And
Taralyn Michelle here of the Grind Defined podcast and TaralynMichelle.com.
yes, yes. And as you should know, if you are here on a Tuesday, you should know what it's time. It's time for that Taralyn Michelle and Billy Wroe live. Brother Bruce Gatewood is already in the building. Really quick, there's just been so much that's been going on in the world in general, but in
Yeah.
life. I'm having great conversations about the show and as far as the content, what we're discussing. It's really resonating with viewers. And so I just want to keep that spirit alive. As always, you guys know we're about that engagement. So make sure you engage in tonight. So tonight's topic that we have that we're going to discuss is the scarcity mindset. The scarcity mindset. And much like the Wednesday word, we like to kind of say and unpack what the scarcity mindset is. I think we'll try to keep track of who goes first, but we're going to work on alternating. But right now, you're going to go first. Taralyn, what does the scarcity mindset mean for you or to you?
Well, I relate with this one quite well. I remember a point in time in my life where I don't care how much I did, no matter what I accomplished, it was never enough, ever. And I think the scarcity mindset is all about a disconnect from what your reality is, not being able to see what you have that's of value in front of you because of looking so far ahead as to what you would want or what your goals are. And I know for me that's how that was. And so as I started to go through college and graduate school, and you have all your different goals and things that you're doing with careers and things like that, I would choose something to do. I'd be in the middle of it. And just as it was getting to the end, I'm on to the next thing. I never took a minute to really pause and take in what I had accomplished and what I had. And what it did was it's an exhausting way of being, because if you're not taking stock of what you've accomplished, giving yourself credit, actually taking some time to live in a space of gratitude. And me, I'm a woman of God, and say just thank you for the things that I have. When you're not doing that, then I know for me it was emotionally it was just a emotionally exhausting, a lot of weight, it's spiritually draining. It actually created a space of depression, because I don't
Mm,
care how much I did, I never felt like I was doing enough. I never felt like what I did really mattered. I never felt like I was getting closer to being able to actually bring into fruition the things that I wanted. It wasn't until I got to a certain space in life and everything kind of crashed, once I lost a lot, then all of a sudden I was able to really say, wait a minute. All of this time, I'm so busy looking way down ahead and over the hill, I'm not realizing how much I have accomplished and how much I've done. And then also, too, at that space and time in my life, the way I place value on things, that's what the problem was for
mm,
me. If it wasn't going to be something that was going to equal money, it was all about a lot of tangible things. And so when you're always chasing something tangible, I know at least this was the case for me, then there was a huge disconnect between what was actually value spiritually, the things that fill you from the inside, the things that bring you peace, the things that bring you joy. When your sense of value is skewed, then it can kind of take you off track and keep you on this hamster wheel of just this insatiable appetite that can never be fed. So at least that's what that meant for me.
mm. Man, I almost don't even want to share what it means to me. But really quick, because I have to touch on this. The aspect of that last part where you say chasing the tangible, and immediately my mind goes to how we chase these things that are filling, but they're not wholesome.
Yeah.
And um, how that pursuit is insatiable
Hmm.
as far as you can chase it, you can get it, but it will never quite be enough to cause you to stop chasing.
Yeah.
So I had to put that there because that is, ooh, that's powerful. That's why I said I almost don't want to share what it means to be.
Come on now, bro. You have to. It's your turn now. All right. So I'm all ears.
So for me, the scarcity mindset is really a sub symptom or a subcategory of the fear mindset. Um, a fear of lack, a fear of inadequacy, a fear of um, not being worth or worthy enough. That is what the scarcity mindset really rings or disturbs within me when I think of scarcity.
Yeah.
And for the the purposes of what it is to have this scarcity mindset, I look at it like the best example of it was recently when we were dealing with COVID and there was a fear of scarcity of supplies. And that fear drove actions. It drove real actions. Like you got people hoarding hand sanitizer, hoarding toilet paper, hoarding all the things that they can possibly hoard. And so for me, when I think about the scarcity mindset, even though I say it's a subcategory of a fear mindset, what it really at the end of the day leads me to is that it is the driving motive behind the human nature of greed. That's where the scarcity mindset for me at the end of the day will always land. It's always in some form, shape, fashion going to land on greed. So that's when I seen this topic that we were going to unpack, I was like, man, we just lived through this 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And the moment there was a thought that there was going to be scarcity, people went out and tried to hoard as much as they possibly could for themselves.
Oh yeah, not only that, and then after they went and bought all that toilet paper from Walmart, then Walmart wouldn't let them return it.
Right. Yeah, they want to take it back. Okay, crisis avert. There's abundance. Okay, well, I want to take it back. No, you're gonna keep that. You'll
No,
keep
no,
all
but
that.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. There's that fear that sets in. And it's something about things that's a space of comfort for a lot of us. And I mean, let's just face it. I mean, social media and everything, we're inundated with all of these images of excess and excess equaling happiness. And
Mhm.
so I think it's human nature too for folks to compare. I think we've all at some point in time been in that space in our life where, you looking over somebody's fence in their yard it looks better than yours, but if you spent that time in your own yard, then you never know what could happen. So I think that a lot of it is just the way that things have been set up, societally set up. I mean, we live in a capitalistic society. Come on, so it's
Right.
all of that. But then when identity, because the need for excess and that greed, that selfishness, that wanting to have all of these things for oneself, I have experienced a lot in coaching that a lot of that has to do with misplaced identity. A lot of people affix their identity to external things. And so
Mhm.
if having those external things is a way in which one identifies themselves, if that's where their sense of value comes from, their sense of belonging comes from, their sense of importance comes from, then that's a lot of it too. And that's another thing that you saw with COVID. There were a whole lot of people who had their identity tied up in their job title, tied up in the type of car that they had, tied up in the type of home that they owned, tied up in the type of assets, just knowing how much they had in the bank. And then COVID hits, and it was a game changer for a lot of people. A lot of people
Right.
lost those titles. A lot of people lost those cars. A lot of people lost their bank account didn't take a huge hit. A lot of people ended up having to deplete what they had just to maintain where they were because of people not having their jobs and things like that. And so it was just COVID had so many different layers to it, because on the one end, the positive side, it helped people to get outside of the box that they had been in, this catatonic state of just repeating the same thing every day on autopilot. And it made people really have to become present and engaged, become resourceful, and tap
Right.
into some skill sets that they probably didn't know that they had. That's the one side that was positive. The negative side of it was it also exposed too how many people have been reliant upon identity that was affixed to things outside of themselves. And now you really have to start to see, who are you really? How dope do you really think that you are now that you lost that house and you don't have that car? Or now
Right.
they said, hey, let's go out. And you like, well, nah, I got $12.85 in the bank. I don't know if I'll be able to do that like I used to, So um, people having the opportunity to really be able to be forced, or I would say not be able to, but being forced to take a look at themselves honestly. And I'm happy to say that a lot of people took that opportunity to do a reset, at least the clients that I work with, to do a reset and start to build on a different foundation that's based on filling voids from within as opposed to external objects being what their value is affixed to.
Right, those support beams.
Hmm.
Really quick, I asked a question in the live chat. What does the scarcity mindset mean to you? And it looks like Madeline Underwood says, crabs in a barrel comes to mind for me.
Oh, that's good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, Maddie.
It's like, hey, wait, there's not enough opportunity outside of this bucket, so I got to pull you back in to try to climb back out. No, like,
That
guess
is
what?
really good.
If we just all get out the bucket, we all free.
There you go. That part.
um, so no, I agree with you though on how COVID exposed what I see as the support beams externally that we had holding up our building, the
Hmm.
facade of our building's a skyscraper and it can withstand anything. Yeah, because it has support beams at every level, helping it stand up from the outside. But
Yeah.
really on the inside, there's not enough building structure or integrity to hold that building up to stand alone. We've seen this happen in relationships, people being in that relationship. Oh, I'm a wife. Oh, I'm a husband. Oh, I'm a
Yeah.
boyfriend. Oh, I'm a girlfriend. Oh, whatever they were in that relationship. And then all of a sudden now you're stuck at home with this
Mhm.
person that by being in the relationship, going to a different building where you work at, oh, yeah, how's the wife? How's the kids? How's the boyfriend? How's life? All those wonderful things that you had as a part of your identity. Now everybody in the house knows you, good and good and bad. They know you. And
Right.
so when I start to think about how some relationships fell apart and some of those identities that people were holding on to shifted and changed, it's like, man, why if I had to choose between if I had a scarcity mindset and I had to choose between what I would want to hoard, I would want to hoard as many things that are internal to me that I could hold on to versus the external things that I could surround myself with to make it seem like I'm something that I'm not. And really, when I think about the scarcity mindset, is it comes down to not wanting to do that work because it's a lot of work to invest in yourself. You and I as coaches, we know number one, there's a monetary investment when you get a coach to help coach you through something. There's a monetary investment that you have to put forth in
Yeah.
order to get that. But outside of the monetary investment, there's a lot of mental, emotional, draining investment that you have to
Mhm.
do in order to get the results that either a coach is helping you guide you towards or the results that you say you seek. So the scarcity mindset will in my thought process will make a person not make that investment because there has to be an easier way. I could just go and get the Lamborghini and girls will like me. We see this all the time when people think that their material things afford them the access. We just talked about this last week for sale. The
Yeah.
material things think it affords them the access, but that's really a scarcity mindset because
Yeah.
you're trying to grab these things that are going to uh, inflate your identity when unfortunately if you know the little wavy things that are out inside of the car salesman things, yeah, if you turn the machine off, it's flat. It's flat. There's no substance to it.
Yeah.
And that's what the scarcity mindset does. I feel like it causes you to hoard all these things to make you appear to be full, but the moment those things are gone, yeah, you're flat because you didn't develop really a true foundation or the framework necessary for it to be founded upon. Really quick, I'm going to put in the chat. If you want to join us live, this is Taralyn, Michelle, and Billy Wroe live. But if you want to join us live, you have something that you want to share, we're going to place in the chat a link for you to be able to join us on stage, share your thoughts, share your story, and also share your experience. Taralyn, can you take away? Key Bryant had a comment that he put up.
Just 1 second. All right. It says, first thing that comes to mind for me with scarcity mindset are paradigms we've developed from our environment and parenting from a young age. Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. I think that so much of how we see things, I always say that, well, I know at least for me, I didn't realize until many years in that the foundation that my life was built on wasn't all of my choosing. There were so many
Mm,
bricks that were already there, and then I just started placing my bricks kind of around them. And so I completely and totally agree with Key when it comes to that. You know, so much we take, we don't even mean to. So much of our childhood just seeps into who we are. And if there's not a space where we connect with that, that will be a reason why we get to be adults, and there are spaces where we know that things are not gelling, things are a little disconjointed, we don't understand exactly why, and then you're taking and searching, and you're thinking that it's all you, but a lot of it is just a whole lot of belief systems and idealisms that were passed on that you just kind of adopted and added your own thing to. So yeah, that I can definitely get behind that. Key, that makes a lot of
mm.
sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. One of the things that also the scarcity mindset does is it causes you to grab as many things as possible. And when you do
Mhm.
that, sometimes you grab things that aren't were never intended for you. They
Yeah.
were never, you grab experiences that were never intended for you to experience. You
Absolutely.
grab relationships that were never intended for you to experience. You grab circumstances, you grab jobs, you grab all these things because you're so worried about what you don't have or the scarcity of what is out there as far as opportunity that you just grab everything. And then you're like, okay, it's like going trick or treating. You sort through your candy after, and then you might find you have some Tootsie Rolls and you don't even like Tootsie Rolls. Like,
Mhm.
dang, I could have really just not had them put that in my bag. But because you're out there as a kid and you trick or treat, 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 and then you get back, we have pillowcases. We didn't have fancy things. So you get back with a pillowcase full of candy,
Right.
with a pillowcase full of candy. And now all of
Right.
a sudden you are going through that candy and you might realize that 50% of that candy is not even candy that you like, or
Right.
it's not even candy that anybody in the house likes, so you can't even trade it out for candy that you do like. And so think about that.
Yeah.
This bag that you've been carrying around with 100% of the candy, 50% of that load was never intended for you to carry.
Yeah, yeah. I love that analogy, and that hammers things home. But you know, I'm thinking about a little bit earlier when
Mhm.
you talked about folks not willing to make that investment in doing the work that they need to do internally so that their value isn't affixed to external things. But here's the thing, there are so many people who don't even know that that's a thing, that that's something that they need to be doing. I mean, we are creatures of habit, right? And
Right.
so we'll just get to going in life, and we're moving, and we're just living our life. We're just doing our thing. You know, you just, if you have your children, if you're in school, if you're chasing your career, whatever it may be, a lot of the times things will become difficult, or we'll have those spaces of stagnation within our life. But a lot of people don't think that the disconnect that they're feeling, if they're dealing with anxiety, depression, if they're having continuous issues with relationships, intimate personal relationships, if there's turmoil within the family, a lot of times people don't go to themselves and internal work first. The first thing
Right.
they go to is another external fix, because if you're someone who's used to an external fix, then that's what you go to. Well, I'm having issues with my brother, he's stupid. Well, this and that with my job, they tripping. You know, or you
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? That's not something that a lot of people are aware of. I mean, there's the assumption that there are people who are aware and they avoid it. That's true, but I think there are more people than not that are not aware that the self check has to stop with them, and has to start with them, excuse me, and then that introspective work. I don't think a lot of people know that. I think what happens sometimes is, and a lot of my experience with clients has been, they get into relationships and they're coming for marriage counseling or relationship counseling, and then they'll come to me for support, and come to find out that they find out from through the person that they're with that, yo, the common denominator is you, and this is where this should start. But if they had been, kind of makes you wonder, if they hadn't have connected with that particular person, would that have even been something in their top three to
Mm.
look at with themselves? So I think there are a lot of people who are just blind to it. They're just oblivious that taking that time to do that inward work would be a good starting point.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Really quick, to answer that original question on what does the scarcity mindset mean to you? Brian Sr. says fear, particularly of the unknown.
Oh, that one.
Absolutely. That
That's a good one.
unknown, is there any opportunity left? Is this the last opportunity? Because if it is, then I want that opportunity to be mine. But
Yes.
really, I was just having a conversation before we got into the studio with somebody, and we were talking about our personalities and how um, we are both the types of individuals who, I don't even want to say to our own detriment, to our own belief in who we are just certain things about us that we are 100% not willing to compromise. And when a significant other requests us to compromise it, when a job requests us to compromise it, when a friend, when life, when anything requests for us to compromise it,
Yeah.
the answer is just no.
Yeah.
The answer is no. And I think when it comes to once you start doing that inner work that you're talking about, and you start moving out of that scarcity and realizing that, hey, there's an abundance out there. Like, think of it. You can, if we're just from a monetary perspective,
Hmm.
you can make money doing anything,
Pretty much.
anything.
Literally.
Like some
Yeah.
of the things that I'm like, wait, they make money doing that? Like, you can make money
Right.
doing anything. So if you can make money doing anything, that means the opportunity that you're currently in making money is not the last opportunity. I remember when I left my job in California, that people were like, "Oh my God, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?" Because I was leaving a job without having a job in place.
Yeah.
And to me, it was simple. It was like, well, I'm not able to retire, so I know I got to go and get back to work.
Right.
I'm going to get another job. Like, this isn't my first job. You guys realize I've had jobs before this, right? And so it's that when you begin to move away from that, you're able to stand on what is more significant, which is your identity, which is your morals, which is your character, which is your compass. You're able to stand on that and be able to make, honestly, no an option. When you feel like when you're in a scarcity mindset, it's really hard to say no to things because, well, you know, some cake is better than no cake. I was
Hmm.
in a Walmart the other day, and we're having a game night this upcoming Friday, and we're gonna order some little mini nothing bundt cakes. And I was in Walmart, and I'm at the self checkout, and I see Hostess has these little mini bundt lit cakes in the container. And I just remember looking at them, and I said, absolutely not. Like, absolutely not.
Not.
Like, I have a standard for what I am willing to consume at the caloric level. And if this is what the standard has to be, then that means I need to move some other standards that I have for myself so that I can afford what I want to eat. Because eating a prepackaged, no dog to Hostess, because I mean, I've thrown back some Hostess pies in my day. But if it means eating this on shelf life of 100 years
Right.
cake, that's just not an option. That is not an option for me. That is not something I'm willing to sign up for. Really quick to bring into the chat, or from the chat, and it looks like he wants to join us, but it says, for me, this is BGate82. For me, it triggers a fear of being a bad father, but not in the
Mhm.
eyes of others, only in the eyes of my children. I never want them to feel about me the way I felt and or feel about my parents. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like we got a special invited guest that we're going to bring on. We got Brother Key Bryant.
Come
We're going
on.
to go ahead and bring him on in. Let's go.
What's
Hey,
going on, family? How are y'all? How are y'all doing?
good,
Y'all
good.
got
How
some
you
good
doing?
topics. I'm doing blessed. I'm doing blessed.
Good.
Look, I got to get the kids ready for either softball, I mean basketball or baseball game. But
So many
I had to
things.
jump in on this real quick. I had to jump on this real quick because I've been trying to have paradigm shifts for myself. and this whole scarcity mindset thing and the way that I grew up, I find a lot of things coming back to haunt me that I didn't, realize was there. So that's why I mentioned the whole paradigm thing because, you know, growing up in scarcity, when you have things, you're still living in a life of scarcity, which is
Yeah.
very it starts bringing things into your life that you didn't invite,
Right.
right? And like you guys were saying, it was like, hey, you really have to, do these inner workings, right? To find out what those things are. To
Mhm.
stop you from going back, putting yourself back into a position you never were supposed to be in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so with that, the fears and the paradigms with that, I kind of go into the shift of how can you switch it from this scarcity mindset, knowing that the world is abundant in everything. Like we really don't have to sit here and think that we can be without. Although we might see examples of it, or examples of poverty that are out there. Uh, Everything you can be so resourceful, like Billy was saying earlier. You can make money and do anything. I think
Yeah.
there was a little kid that was painting rocks and made like it became a millionaire. Like
Yeah.
there's so much that you can do out there, and being able to shift that mindset, knowing that uh, God has given us all the resources on this earth for us to be able to not live in this mindset any longer.
Mhm.
And so,
Absolutely.
with that, do you guys have any tips or anything to transition from a scarcity mindset into a more of an abundant mindset?
Absolutely. I think that first of all, you brought up some really amazing points when you talked about having that scarcity mindset, and because you have it, drawing things to you. People, we really have to stay connected to the fact of how much of who we are is energy. A lot of people talk about manifestation, and if you're someone who's able to manifest the positive, then likewise you can manifest the negative. And so that mindset in the middle, just being any space, any place in the middle of your life will draw that to you. But to answer your question, to be able to shift that, I think the first thing to do is really and truly tap into your reality. And the reality is that no matter what the past was, you're living in successes that you created right now. Belief is so very important. Cultivating belief based on the reality, not on fear, because my acronym for fear is falsehoods emphasized and amplified by regret. The falsehood is
Mm.
that you have no control. You do have control. We have all of the control now. We can't control what happened when we were children. But right now, we have all of the control and key because I know you. You've created amazing success for yourself. That's the reality. That is the truth that you're living in every day. You're living as a pillar, heading your family. You're a heck of a support system for your wife and your children independently. You do what you do. The reality is that that past where you had no control has nothing to do with what you do have control over today, and you manifest nothing but success. So believing and what you've already done is the first step. You have to believe that I don't care what happens, you have what it takes to turn it around. Let's just say that something happened and God forbid you lost everything and went to zero. There's two ways you could look at that. You could look at that as, oh my God, I'm fulfilling the prophecy of what was when I was younger, or that first step around when you were a success, that's nothing but a building block for you to build the bigger success from. There's a lesson to learn. It's not that you failed or did anything wrong. Sometimes we get to certain places, we'll have different hurdles so that we can be even bigger the next time. So at the end of the day, what you believe to be true about you, which you've already cultivated, is what you will continue to cultivate. I don't care what happens. So cultivating that belief, I would say, is step one, and it's the foundation from which you can build everything else. What you got, Billy?
Ooh.
I love that. I love
First off,
that.
I got notes because I'm over here taking notes.
Right.
But no, a lot of what you said, I think there's a couple of key tenets for me. The first part is being a truth teller. Um, when we are in that space of scarcity and we begin to attract the things that really are not intended for us to us, it's about falling back to being a truth teller. For instance, when growing up, we didn't have a lot of money. We lived in one house. We had one house, and being in a neighborhood that wasn't the best neighborhood. It wasn't like the worst neighborhood in America, but it wasn't the best neighborhood.
Yeah.
But living in that neighborhood, I always knew that there was something more. And once, I mean, Key, you know, we're really close friends. Once I got to the space where I was out of that neighborhood and out of the greater neighborhood of California for me, all of a sudden life just was like, woof, it just took off. And in a lot of the things that I was doing, though some of them were scary, like purchasing real estate and then purchasing real estate, and then like, okay, now we have a couple of rentals. Though those things were scary, it's easy to fall back and be like, okay, well, we got to make sure we have this. And my wife and I have had this conversation about like, what is, because she's like, you know, I've been without money before and I don't want to be without money again. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to live like that. And I'm like, I absolutely agree. But let's take a step back and speak the truth. Here's our finances. Here's the financials. Here's the reality of right now. This is being that truth teller and saying, babe, we're in a better position than a lot of families. By the grace of God, thank you. Totally appreciate the blessings. But we're in a better position. So to live in this scarcity mindset where we're in fear of not having when we actually have, that's counterintuitive to continuing to building.
Yeah.
And so that's the truth teller aspect. But to go back again to that example, we also have to be very good at identifying what our triggers are. You know, you might eat a bowl of top ramen noodles, and that takes you back to when that's the only option you had was top ramen noodles. So it's identifying those triggers and having some preemptive measures in place. So like one of the things for me, and I think I spoke about this on a Wednesday word about how before getting to zero in my bank account was like, whoo, I'm at zero. I'm not negative. That's a win. And then it was like, okay, I got to zero. And then it was like, well, now I want to have $100 in my bank account. Now I want to have $200 in my bank account. Now I want to have $500 in my bank account, and continuing to move that number up. What I'm doing is I'm creating some fail safes built in. So when I feel like, oh man, like me, I could have $1,000 in my account, but be like, man, I feel like I don't got enough money in my account. And so because I have a different fail safe, it triggers earlier. I'm not at negative in my bank account starting from the ground zero. Right. I'm now at $1,000 saying, man, I need to put $200 more in my account so that I'm at that $1,000 zero. So I'm preemptive on some of my triggers because I realize when my bank account gets low, when I have to monitor my bank account, because if one unaccounted for payment comes in, I'm going to have an overdraft fee. That is a stressful mindset. That creates stress, which then supplies the fuel necessary for me to have a scarcity mindset. And then lastly, the other part is about continuing to move the bar up. When I think about the scarcity mindset is almost like if I was a high jumper, but I only had to jump over a bar that was never moved. I'm never going to jump any higher than I absolutely have to. I'm just going to jump over that bar again. I might be able to jump 8 feet higher, but I'm only jumping where that bar is set to. And so because we only jump as high as the bar is set, in order to overcome and sometimes shift out of that scarcity mindset, sometimes we just have to set the bar higher. We have to say, you know what? This is where I think the job market, there's not a lot of jobs out there. Being in real estate, Key, there's not a lot of houses out there for me to get. How am I going to set the bar higher so that regardless if the supply is low for me to market or to sell or to have buyers come in and buy, I'm their number one choice. How do I become competitive? And that's what setting the bar does, is you learn how to compete in the abundance. Like we all know it's abundant, but you learn how to compete in the abundance. And what that does is it gives you more of a share and more of a cushion for when you do make those mistakes, when you do have those triggers, when you do have those moments and you fall back to like, oh, I'm concerned, I don't know where the next deal is going to come from. It gives you a cushion because you're competitive. Those are the three things I have.
I like that. I love that one about the bar. That's real good. I like that.
Yeah. It kind of what resonated with me, Taralyn, when you mentioned telling the right now, the story right now. It's almost like be appreciative and grateful. Be in the spirit of appreciation, right? Of what you have now, because if you're going to the past all the time, and you're not in the present, and you're being appreciative of that, how can you continue to grow? Like, you're just going to keep going backwards. You're just going to stifle yourself. Man, I love all those points. That was amazing, you guys. Amazing.
Our pleasure. You know what, Key? I know all too well about staying stuck in the past worry, just having that stuff strapped to your back and not really being present in what you've accomplished, how much it took to build the man that you are now from the different stages. I mean, only you, God, now your wife knows what that journey was like. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so to get to that space and really just take a pause when I start to feel those feelings, because since we're creatures of habit, Billy, just like you said, I can be triggered at times. When I start to feel those feelings, that's when I take a minute to unplug. It could be turning off my phone, silence and shut my computer down, and just taking a minute to breathe and see where I am, what's going on, what I have accomplished, what do I have today that's different than 2 years ago, a year ago. Because really a whole lot changes in 12 months and we don't tend to think about or even pay attention to it because we're moving. Sometimes just choosing a moment to be in, even if it's only for 5 minutes, it makes a huge difference. It helps to center you, and then now you can move forward. But I think one of the things too is these things that we have within our being and within our character that'll come back up from past trauma. A lot of people, I just want to get rid of it altogether. Well, guess what? Sometimes you can, but a lot of times we don't. But guess what? That's the secret sauce that keeps us being amazing. And like Billy said, creating those different bars that we jump over, those things are meant to serve us. They're not meant to hinder us. Without those things, we just fall back and chill. Why would we push if we didn't have those reminders of where we once were? And so those things are meant, Key, to elevate you to the next level. They're there to serve you in a positive way. It's just up to us to connect to them and use them and not allow them to use us.
Love it. Love it.
You got to go, Key.
Appreciate y'all. I got to get going. I appreciate it, though. I love it all.
Thank you so much for stopping in.
Last week, if I would have known, I would have went live. I mean, we would have went on for like 3 hours, y'all. That was a crazy topic. So yeah.
Appreciate you coming on live, Key. You have a good one, brother.
Hey, you got it. You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that's fun.
You're right.
So we have a couple of things that came in from the chat as well while Key was live.
Let's check them out.
The first one was from Soto Jose. It says, how will it work for I think a relationship, or relationships that have two different scarcity views on how they can work together?
Okay, that one.
How can they work together? Okay, I understand what he's saying. He's basically saying in a relationship where you have two different scarcity views that are trying to merge in that relationship and become one trajectory, how can they work together? I'll let you address that first, Taralyn.
I think compromising on what the middle is. If the point of no return is different for each person, then having that conversation with what both of your bottoms are and what you fear, and then creating a space what your bottom is for the two of you that you can agree on. And then that way you can start to build from there. Because everybody, like you said, Billy, that point where, yes, you went from I'm not negative to I just have 0 till 1,000 is my bottom when it comes to finances, and just using that as an example. But with couples, just agreeing on what that bottom point is, and then starting to build from there. And again, staying tapped into that reality of what is, as opposed to what you fear. What you got?
Yeah, I would say definitely it's communication, it's compromise. It is really about, if you're in a relationship, the whole premise behind being in a relationship is to not get out of the relationship, right? You're going to be in this for life is the objective. And so it is a continual learning process. But foundationally, think about it. Sometimes you have kids with people that you never intended to have kids with because you didn't think foundationally about what that person would be like as a parent. Do they believe in spankings? Do they do timeout? Do they just let the kids run wild? Like you don't even have these conversations. I'm going to say most of the times these conversations are not being had prior to children being developed. There are some times where you do have these conversations and then that just doesn't go as planned.
Right.
But when it comes to that scarcity mindset, is that if you can attach that, it has to do with your partner's fears.
Mm-hmm.
The scarcity is originating from your partner's fears. It really becomes, how do I learn about the fears that my partner has? That's why my wife and I had a conversation where it was like, okay, what's your fear? Your fear is I don't want to be broke. What does broke look like to you? Because if it looks like where we're currently at, then we got some work to do. But to me, that doesn't look like being broke to me.
Right.
I've had a whole different experience with broke that was nothing like this.
Right. Right.
So
That's a good point.
About communicating and being in a relationship, you should have a space of safety, a space of understanding, a space that is non-judgmental to where you can open up about your fears. Hey, look, I'm concerned about diabetes. That's something that is in my family's medical history. I'm concerned about diabetes, so I need to be kind of forthcoming with being on top of that. And so talking to my partner, talking to my spouse, making sure that she's aware of those types of fears that I have, the medical fears that I have, the financial fears that I have, the future fears that I have. And that should be an ongoing space. And it is very helpful if you create a physical space in your dwelling for that space to exist in. My wife's space and I is in the bed. In the bed, we have 2 rules. Third rule, but I ain't gonna bring that up on there. But 2 rules. 2 main rules. Number 1, if a question is asked in the bed, then that question has to be answered truthfully and honestly. And then number 2 is that the bed is not a space where we judge each other. So we have a physical location in our house. We can stop at the end of the day if we're taking a nap, if we're waking up in the morning, and if there's something on our mind that we need to talk about, we can talk about it in this physical space.
Yeah.
And not have to be worried about exposing something that we should be able to be vulnerable to our partners to in the first place. So that's the first step, is really having this space of is having the communication and the dialogue so that you guys are on the same page. Yes, you guys have 2 different scarcity mindsets, and being on the same page doesn't mean that this is what your scarcity mindset is now. You might still have your scarcity mindset here and hers here, or vice versa.
Right.
What it is about is understanding where it's at. So when this is triggered up here, they know, okay, I'm triggered. Okay, they're triggered. How are we going to get them off of their scarcity mindset and move them back towards an abundance mindset?
Yeah.
Even though you're not triggered.
I love in your example, really accepting and embracing that we don't always have to be here. It's okay. We're together as a couple, but we're individuals. As a couple, we're on our journey, but we're individuals on individual journeys as well. It's okay for us to meet each other where we happen to be and still work together and do that successfully. So I love that illustration. That's good.
So I hope that answers your question, Soto. If not, ping us again in the chat, or you can come in live. Let me go ahead and put that in there one more again. One more again for the people. One more
come
again.
on in. Maddie, you can come in.
We do have some other things. Can you read Madeline's?
Yes, I see. As a community, we are so accustomed to survival mode. Yes, it is difficult to deprogram and then reprogram for the same. It's a lifelong commitment. Maddie, yes, it is. And that goes back to us being creatures of habit, and so us taking from childhood and past so much of what was when we didn't have control into who we are now, and who we continue to evolve to be as adults now that we do have control. You're right. And then that whole deprogramming and reprogramming, now you have to get into addressing some of those habits, finding the roots for a lot of different things that are there, because a lot of the times we'll want to address something in the middle of it. and not understanding that if you're just addressing the middle, but the root is still there are still going to be other things that could trigger you, because there are many different layers to a lot of these things that we go through. So that's such a wonderful point. And that is knowing that lets anyone know that, okay, hey, there's some work that I need to do, some groundwork. And I have to say this for anyone who's watching this, and this is bringing up some different things that maybe you're starting to reconsider, and some adjustments that you might want to make within yourself. Patience. You have to have patience. These things are multi-layered and they take time, but so did creating these mindsets. These mindsets took time to create. So it's not something where when you decide that, hey, I think I want to address this, now all of a sudden you're going to be able to ping, 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 microwave society, press a button and it's done. It took time to get these layers, habits built around them, defense mechanisms, so many different layers and people in our life and all of that. All of these different things were built around that. Now it's going to take some time to unravel it. So just if you decide that you want to dive into something like this, just be patient with yourself and just glide through the process. It's nothing that has to be done instantaneously. In fact, it's more effective when you're going through those steps, because you're not only unraveling what has been a challenge for you, you're also rebuilding and strengthening who you are spiritually and your mindset and everything throughout the process. So it's a very rewarding experience that you really want to take the time and be present in.
Absolutely. You know, when you said root cause, getting to that root cause analysis, it made me think about if somebody was like, hey, Billy, I have some plants at my house. I'm going out of town. Can you take care of my plants for me while I'm gone? I wouldn't go in my car to their house and get all their plants and bring it to my house and care for their plants at my house.
Right. Right.
And then I also thought about how, you know, when we look at the root cause and we're carrying, sometimes this is just something that just came to my mind, but sometimes as we are carrying things that don't belong to us, the roots are not with us. What we are doing is we have a flower that has been picked, and we are nurturing the hell out of that flower to keep it alive. But the flower does not have its roots to truly keep it in the state that it was before it was picked.
I don't care what you do, eventually it's gonna die.
Eventually it's gonna die. The time frame in which it dies really is up to us. So when you do that root cause analysis, sometimes realize that the roots don't sit with you. It's just a flower that you've picked that's with you. And you're going to have to make the decision to no longer water that flower, to no longer give it the plant food packet that they give you in the little flower thing. It's your choice to let that flower actually wither and die. That's something that when you are in survival mode, because you are just happy to have the little bit that you have, it's sometimes hard to let go of what was never meant for you to have. So I really like that, Madeline, that you, and I'm not going to call you Maddie because I don't know you like that. So
but you know, I keep thinking about this, Billy. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that was it. I was just going to say, so Madeline, go ahead.
No, I've been thinking about this during the course of this conversation. I can't remember what chapter of your book it is, but in Hire Your Job, Fire Your Passion, which you guys, man.
You just said that backwards.
I'm sorry. Fire your, thank you. Fire your job, hire your. Wait a minute. Thank you. My brain's going a million miles a minute with this question. But with Fire Your Job, Hire Your Passion, you guys, if you haven't gotten it already, you have to go to firstrow.com. You can download the first chapter for free. And I guarantee you, once you read it, you're going to want to pick up the book. But I think about when you talk about the different frequencies, there's so many different points in that book that stuck with me. But in this conversation, I want to know, how would you liken the thought process of different frequencies and how we can be going through this scarcity mindset? And when you're in that scarcity mindset, there is a space that you are that is not reality for the average person. It is not reality. It's just what you're seeing based on fear. So then, being in that mindset, how then that would make you miss the frequency of other people around you, how that would impact how you actually have relationships, living in any space of consistent fear. is not good. You're emanating that energy. You're emanating all of the different things that come up from within based on fear. So I think about when you talk about in the book, which I think was so cleverly done, when you talked about how those different frequencies, other people have their frequencies, and then you have your frequency on your own. But then knowing how to not to tell the difference with what's going on with other people and how to guard your frequency in your space. How do you think that would attach to this mindset and this conversation?
Oh, you asking deep.
I don't know no other way.
So,
That's how we talk. But I've been thinking about that this entire conversation.
so with the frequencies, and I don't want to give too much of the book away because you got to work to get to this point of the book.
Right.
With the frequencies, I think it has to do with really keeping your signal authentic. When we go into scarcity, if we transfer that from a mindset to a frequency, our signal becomes inauthentic because now I was just watching something on like a small clip, and it was like, I think it was Master P, and he was talking about how wealthy people are not running around boasting about all the things they got, and it took me back to Cash Money Records 99.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, wait a minute, that's all you guys talked about in the No Limit
Right.
in the No Limit situation was G5s, G500s, and everything else. So like,
Yes.
what are you talking about?
You forgot about that. Manny Fresh them, right?
But it's that signal. You're not being authentic to your own signal. And what happens is when you're not being authentic to your own signal, it disrupts the signals of others, and it disrupts the ability for your signal to be received by others. And so when I think about this scarcity mindset, I think about how we are going after what we perceive to be scarce supply, which is really abundant supply. So there's an argument there. And so people are looking like, why are they grabbing all the Tic Tacs like Tic Tac is going out of business? And what that does is it disrupts people's understanding of why you're doing what you do. But more importantly, so is it disrupts your own understanding about why you're doing what you do. And that's where I think if I was to think about the frequency aspect that I'm broadcasting, it's going to make it very hard to make the connections that I need to connect with, to build the relationships that I need to build. And then it's going to make it very hard for me if I have moments of frustration, if I have triggers, it's going to make it very hard to understand those triggers because I'm not being authentic to my own signal. And it goes all the way back to being that truth teller, telling ourselves the truth about the current state of the present. So that's how I would see that. Is it's a disruption. It's almost like a jammer. That's the word I would use. It is a jammer to our authentic frequency. And when your frequency isn't authentic, people can pick up on it like that. And all of a sudden people start trying to get away from you because they're like, something don't feel right. Something don't feel right. I don't know what it is, but it don't feel right.
And we've all been in that situation with the person where you just like, I know what I see, but this doesn't seem like that's really them.
Yes.
I don't even know them, but I know that this doesn't feel like this is them. So I don't know. I don't want to be around it, but yeah, that's thank you for that. Cause I was, conversation just going, but I kept just thinking about the frequency in the book. So good deal. I know that in this conversation, oh no, go right ahead.
No,
take that.
Go ahead.
I know that in this conversation, this is one that I think plagues many people to this day because we're just bombarded, like I mentioned earlier, with all the images of excess and how excess equals accessibility and happiness, or at least that's the way things are made to appear. And I think that coming to a space where with the scarcity mindset, number one, I love that you talked about the truth, but number two, defining what success is for ourselves and not allowing imagery and comparison of other people's lives to set that bar for our own life. I think there are so many people out there who feel as though happiness has to be like what they've seen over there or they see over there, instead of really connecting to what happiness is for you, irregardless to what someone else may think or what it may look like to someone else. I just, that space of being truthful with what your life really is, but being truthful with what makes you feel full, what makes you feel whole. Is it just about the fact that someone else has it? Or do you really even require that? You know what I'm saying? A
Right.
lot of the times we require a whole lot less than what we chase if we just set back and allowed ourselves to live in what our authentic truth is unapologetically. And that takes some courage, that takes some security in yourself, that takes some grace for yourself, and that takes some appreciation for who you are and what you bring to your life at the present space that you are in your life, even if where you are isn't exactly where you want to be. We're all always striving to do something more. That still doesn't mean that we can't appreciate where we've gotten ourselves to, even if it isn't perfect. So,
Right. Really, really quick, I'm going to catch up the chat. So
yep.
it looks like Bruce, this is back when I think he was on. It says, be present. Man, that's really good stuff right there. And he corrected it later and said, not mad, but man. Soto Jose says, my wife tells me all the time, appreciate what you have now. We are doing better than the past. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it looks like we have, is it Lady Rose. Lady Rose 100. I was like, Lady Rose 100. Appreciate it.
Indeed.
Well, we
Indeed.
are getting close to time, so I'm going to give us a chance to have the opportunity for, if there are any more questions from the live chat. Definitely a productive show today.
Yeah.
Some great questions, some great feedback, and some great shares. So definitely appreciate that. But if there's any more questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. But if
Uh-oh, Billy, Billy, you you frozen for a minute if you could still hear me. Thanks so much to Key Bryant for coming on. Really appreciate your comments and your insight, brother. And for any and everyone out there watching, as always, you can definitely join us live here on stage to weigh in on the conversation. It's been really, really good today. And let me see right over here. I was looking for one other thing. Oh, I also wanted to say this to the point of the conversation today, with the scarcity mindset. I have a book entitled The Ultimate Release that you can get from taralynmichelle.com. The reason why I'm bringing this book up is because this book talks so much about what it's like to have that space in your life that you come to where you realize that you're not connected to the foundation from which you're living on, meaning that many of us, as I mentioned earlier, have so many things from childhood, a foundation with bricks that we had nothing to do with. We just started as adults or even young adults, adding some of our bricks to a foundation that was already there. We get to be a certain age and we realize what the freaking heck is going on, what's going on in our life. The ultimate release is all about making that connection to that foundation, getting to those roots, and resetting a spiritual mindset that is all your own and scaling your life from that point. We know when we're talking about scaling and it has to do with money. We know all about scaling in that context. But I think that it's so very important for us to invest in what it takes. And when I say investment doesn't always have to be money. Investment can be knowledge in many different ways. Invest in our spiritual mindset and make sure that when we're building from the foundation of our life spiritually, that it's a foundation that we set on our own understanding, our own beliefs, and then that way it's easier for us to be able to connect to the power spaces within ourselves and to grow from those spaces. So definitely check out The Ultimate Release at taralynmichelle.com. Billy, I don't know whether he will make it back or not, but anyway, I want to thank everyone out there for watching us, everybody on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. I think we're streaming a few different places. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can catch us every Tuesday night here live. Of course, you always have the opportunity to join the stage. Billy is going to be doing Wednesday Word. That's every Wednesday. You'll be able to catch that tomorrow on his YouTube channel. You can go ahead and check out First Row on YouTube to uh, catch that live. Also, The Grind Defined, my podcast. That airs live every Friday, not live, doesn't drop live every Friday, but fresh episodes every Friday. You can catch that at thegrinddefined.com. Also, I'm on all major platforms. The Grind Defined is syndicated, all major platforms, iTunes, Spotify, you name it, as well as some local radio stations. So, gotta definitely check that out. It is what's hot and what's going on now. In the meantime, in between time, go into the rest of your week shining and everything that you put your hands on turning to gold because, hey, God made you that way. It's already won and done. Check us out next week. You guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Peace and abundant blessings.